China is attempting to replace all its Windows computers within 2 years. It just released its first domestic operating system developer platform, OpenKilian. A Chinese-Canadian tycoon's trial is being held in Shanghai, but Canadian officials were denied access. Niu Tengyu was one of 24 young people in prison for publishing details about Xi Jinping's daughter and brother-in-law. His mother had sent an open letter to the Guangdong political and legal system demanding the case be vindicated. Finally, a Taiwanese strategist analyzes how China's 20th National Congress will affect its future. It's likely to end in violence. Welcome to Sound of Hope News. My name is Daniela Wolensack, and today is July 7th. China released its first desktop operating system developer platform, OpenKilian. It was to promote a Chinese desktop operating system. But many Chinese netizens sneered at this new product, stating, "So much hoopla turned out to be just a domestic open source system based on Linux. They can brag about it when they really develop an independent operating system, but certainly not this time." In fact, OpenKilian is based on the Linux Ubuntu operating system. It was first released on June 24th by Kylin Software, which is a subsidiary of China Software Holdings. The main developers included government R&D organizations. Today, most computer users in China use foreign operating systems. To get rid of dependence, China originally developed the software for government agencies and the military. This latest release of OpenKilian is the fourth version after 21 years of efforts. The UK tech news site, The Register, pointed out that in 2000, Chinese government departments were ordered to remove the Windows operating system and switch to the domestic-developed Red Flag Linux. But that move proved to be unsuccessful. China's feuding with the US government and software companies is another reason it wants to leave foreign systems. In 2013, the CCP called upon Microsoft to extend support for Windows XP, which was to be discontinued the following year. China relied heavily on XP at the time. Microsoft did not agree to extend the support. Months after XP went out, China ordered most government departments to stop using Windows 8. According to website Traffic Tool StatCounter, Microsoft's market share in desktop operating systems reached 85% as of June this year. This was in part thanks to the 2017 launch of the Chinese government version of Windows 10. It was developed in partnership with the China Electronics Technology Group, but that did not bring Beijing's goodwill towards Microsoft. In May, the CCP ordered a different kind of zero-goal campaign. All central government agencies and state-owned enterprises were to stop using foreign-brand PCs. The CCP wants a full switch to Chinese-made computers in 2 years. The Chinese-Canadian tycoon Xiao Jianhua's trial was said to have started on Monday, July 4th. However, the case remains shrouded without consular access. The Canadian embassy in Beijing said, "Canada made several requests to attend the trial proceedings of Canadian citizen Mr. Xiao Jianhua. Our attendance was denied by Chinese authorities," CNN reported. The embassy officials added, "We are monitoring this case closely and will continue to press for consular access." Till now, the Chinese authorities have not declared what charges Xiao will face, and Chinese officials have yet to comment publicly on the trial. On Tuesday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said at a daily press briefing he had reached out to relevant departments and was still waiting for their response. The missing billionaire financier Xiao Jianhua was known for his close connections with families of Chinese communist leaders. These started after he sided with the party against student protest in Beijing in 1989. But in 2017, Xiao mysteriously vanished from his room at the Four Seasons Hotel in Hong Kong. Now he stands trial in mainland China. Strangely, he had issued a statement shortly after his disappearance. It stated he was receiving medical treatment abroad and had not been kidnapped. Xiao's disappearance took place at a time when Beijing launched a broader crackdown on corruption. Since then, Chinese regulators have seized 9 enterprises linked to Xiao's investment firm Tomorrow Holdings, which controlled interests in state-dominated industries, including banking, insurance, coal, real estate, and even rare earth. Xiao's case sparked public fears concerning freedoms in Hong Kong. The Chinese regime originally granted the city considerable autonomy for 50 years as part of Britain's 1997 handover of Hong Kong to China. This autonomy is now disappearing. The case reminded people of 5 Hong Kong booksellers who went missing in 2015 after they published critical and sometimes provocative volumes about Chinese leaders. But later, all of them reappeared in detention in mainland China. Those fears caused the largest anti-government protest Hong Kong had ever seen in 2019, after authorities attempted to introduce a controversial bill that allows Hong Kong to transfer fugitives in the city to mainland Chinese courts. To quell mass protests, Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law over the city in 2020. The law grants mainland officials the power to exercise jurisdiction over cases that jeopardize national security. It criminalizes secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign powers, and carries with it a maximum sentence of life in prison. Pro-democracy campaigners say the law has been used to criminalize those who dare to voice out and to silence all dissent against the government. 3 years ago, 24 young people in China were sentenced to prison. Niu Tengyu was one of them. They had exposed personal information about Xi Jinping's daughter, Xi Mingzi, and brother-in-law, Deng Jiagui, on the es.wiki website. On the evening of July 4th, Niu Tengyu's mother, Coco, sent an open letter to the Chinese Communist Party's Guangdong political and legal system. She demanded that the case be vindicated and overturned. Of the 24 young people sentenced, 6 remain in custody, while the remaining 18 have been released after completing their sentences. But according to Coco, the situation of the released is worrisome because they are still under close police supervision and also because they have been labeled political prisoners. They will face many obstacles in their lives. According to Radio Free Asia, Coco said that her son was framed as the main culprit and sentenced to 14 years in prison. He had written several times to appeal the verdict, but was blocked from doing so. Coco also wrote several letters of complaint to the Guangdong High Court, but they all went unanswered. She tried to hire more than a dozen lawyers, but they were all pressured by the authorities and eventually forced to withdraw. Faced with the indefinite suspension of her case, Coco sent an open letter to the Guangdong political and legal system. In the letter, Coco condemned the judicial officers involved for making unjust cases for the sake of promotion and wealth. She demanded that those in charge stop endorsing those responsible for the unjust cases and immediately vindicate the 24 young people. Coco said she recently met with her son by video, who asked her to file a complaint as soon as possible. He did not want to waste his youth in prison. Coco said they can't drag this out, so she quoted Xi Jinping's words, "Beware of pulling lists," in her letter to warn judicial officials. Coco said this open letter was written for all those who were wronged in this case and for their descendants. She hopes that this tragedy will not happen in China again. The CCP's 20th National Congress will critically affect China's future due to the fierce power struggle among high-level officials and repeated epidemic outbreaks. Taiwanese strategist Fan Zhou published a column in Apple Daily on July 6, titled "Closing the Coffin to Define Xi Jinping," giving an outlook on the situation in China after the CCP's 20th National Congress. Fan Zhou had run businesses and lived in China for 22 years. In his book, Talking About Taiwan and China with Xi Jinping, published in 2015, he predicted that Xi Jinping would be in power for 20 consecutive years by abolishing the limited-term system and downgrading the CCP's Politburo Standing Committee. But Fan Zhou also pointed out that the premise for Xi's 20 years in power is to reform the political system, start direct elections, and make an agreement with the United States to neutralize Taiwan permanently. In reality, Xi Jinping did not make political reforms, but directly revised the constitution. Fan Zhou described it as boarding the train without buying a ticket. He believes that this has caused Xi Jinping's domestic and abroad difficulties. It aroused a fierce rebuke within the party and also stimulated the world's vigilance against the CCP. It also contributed to the United States' decision to contain China as its most prominent strategy. In closing the coffin to define Xi Jinping, Fan Zhou said that Xi Jinping accelerated the disintegration of the CCP, enriched humankind's understanding of the centralized and totalitarian system, and promoted the West's introspection on the shortcomings of the American order after World War II. Xi is a veritable chief accelerator. Now that the CCP's 20th National Congress is approaching, the struggle between pro-Xi and anti-Xi factions has entered the stage of direct conflict. The best outcome for Xi is a disastrous victory. After Xi is re-elected, the CCP will return to what former Prime Minister Wen Jiabao said before the 18th National Congress in 2012. the party is destroyed and the country is destroyed. Of course, it's likely Xi will not survive the final game. Fan Chou said that after Xi Jinping came to power, he took down the decisive department step by step. When he finally took down the police system, he also started to collect money bags involving Xiao. This was to prevent local forces from rising and to prepare for decoupling from the West. Fan Chou summed up the policy of the CCP's post-20th National Congress in 3 sentences. Hong Kong becomes mainland China, China becomes Xinjiang, and Xinjiang becomes North Korea. Many observers think that China's economy faces enormous challenges, and 2022 will not be peaceful. Fan Chou also sees finances as the key to seeing where China is headed. He said that when the locals cannot financially operate and the central government cannot supply, the CCP can only rely on violence to rule. If one day the soldiers complain about not being able to eat and the army starts to owe debts, this would be the moment when the CCP finances are on the verge of collapse, and China would undergo significant changes. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you tomorrow.